Good morning. Myself, Mehak Bhatia, Assistant Professor, IIMT College of Science and Technology, Greater Noida. Today, I'm going to give a session on OSI model in computer networks. So let's begin with the lecture. So OSI stands for Open Systems Interconnection. OSI model is a conceptual framework that defines how computers communicate with each other over a network. OSI model is basically a reference model. It is a conceptual model. It is not a physical actual model. It is just a reference model that describes how information from a software application in one computer moves through a physical medium to a software application in another computer. It consists of 7 layers, each with its own specific functions and set of protocols. So in this lecture, we are going to discuss about all the 7 layers of OSI model in details. We will study about the layers and about the function of each layer in detail. So OSI model was developed by International Organization for Standardization, which is ISO in 1984, and it is now considered as an architectural model for the intercomputer communications. OSI model divides the whole tasks of sending information from one end to another into 7 smaller and manageable tasks. Each layer is assigned a particular task. So as we have discussed, there are 7 layers in the OSI model, and each layer has a particular or specific task to perform. Each layer is self-contained, so that task assigned to each layer can be performed independently. Okay. Now, these are the 7 layers of OSI model. The first layer is the physical layer. Second layer is the data link layer. Then the network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer. These are the 7 layers of OSI model. Okay, so the 3 layers from the bottom are known as hardware layers. The physical layer, data link layer, and the network layer, these 3 are known as hardware layers. Why? Because all the hardware functionality, these layers deal with all the hardware functionality. Transport layer is called the heart of OSI model. Okay, we are going to see in the further slides how transport layer is called the heart of OSI model. And the above layers, above 3 layers, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer are known as the software layers of the OSI model. Okay. Now we can divide or categorize the OSI model into upper layers and lower layers. The upper layers of OSI model mainly deals with the application related issues, and they are implemented only in software terms, not in hardware terms. The application layer is closer or closest to the end user. Okay. Application layer basically acts as an interface between the end user and all the other layers of the OSI model. Both the end user and application layer interact with the software applications. Now, the lower layers of the OSI model deals with the data transport issues. Okay. The data link layer and the physical layer are implemented in hardware and the software. So the physical layer is the lowest layer of the OSI model, and it is closest to the physical medium. Okay. The physical layer is mainly responsible for placing the information on the physical medium. So we can categorize the layers into upper layers and the lower layers. Lower layers basically deals with the software related and hardware functionalities, and the upper layers deal with only the software part. Okay, we are going to see how. Now, these are the 7 layers of the OSI model. And here are some of the common functions that are performed by these layers. First is the physical layer. So physical layer, it provides a physical medium through which bits are transmitted. Okay, so here data is in the form of bits. In physical layer, data is in the form of bits. And the physical layer provides a physical medium through which the bits can transmit. Then is the data link layer. Data link layer is used for error-free transfer of data frames. In data link layer, we call data as frames. Okay, so here data link layer is responsible for error-free transmission of data frames. Then comes the network layer. So the network layer is responsible for moving the packets from source to destination. Here, data is known as packets. We refer data as packets in network layer. Then comes the transport layer. Transport layer provides reliable message delivery from process to process, or we can say end-to-end delivery takes place in transport layer. Then comes our session layer. Session layer is basically used to establish and maintain and terminate the sessions. So a connection is established, which is maintained by the session layer. Then comes the presentation layer, which is responsible for translation, code conversion, compression, or encryption, decryption of the data. Then comes the application layer, which is the last layer, or which is the closest to the end user. This layer provides services to the user. As this layer is closest to the end users, this layer basically provides services to the end user. We are going to see in detail how all these layers function. So let's move on to the very first layer, which is the physical layer. We have briefly seen the functions of the physical layer. Now let's study in detail what is a physical layer and what functions does physical layer perform. The main functionality of physical layer is to transmit the individual bits from one node to another. Okay, as the name suggests, physical layer. So physical layer basically is going to provide a physical medium for bits of data to transfer. It is the lowest layer of OSI model. It establishes, maintains, and deactivates the physical connection between the end user and the sender or receiver. It specifies the mechanical, electric, and a procedural network interface specifications. Okay, as you can see in the diagram, from the data link layer, data is going to come in form of frames. Okay, and when the data from data link layer gets into the physical layer, it gets converted in the form of bits or bit stream, a stream of bits. Then the stream of bits is transmitted via a physical medium, any physical device. It can be a cable, a wire, and gets transmitted to the other physical layer, which is on the receiver side. Okay, the sender is going to send the data and it is going to transmit via transmission medium towards the receiver end. And the physical layer passes on this bit stream towards the data link layer. Okay. Now let's discuss the functions of the physical layer. As we have discussed, the main function of physical layer is to provide a physical medium. Okay. Physical medium for the data or for the bits to get transferred. So we can call this function as line configuration. It defines the way how two or more devices can be connected physically. Okay. Then comes the data transmission. One of the most important functions of physical layer is data transmission. It defines the transmission mode, whether it is simplex, duplex, or full duplex mode between two devices on the network. So data can be transmitted via simplex mode of transmission, half duplex or full duplex. In simplex mode of transmission, sender can send, it is just one-way communication. Sender can send data and receiver is going to receive it. In half duplex, sender can also send and receiver can also send data. But in full duplex, sender and receiver both can send the data and they can send it simultaneously. So when simultaneous transfer or transmission of data takes place, it is termed as full duplex mode. So data can be transmitted via simplex, half duplex, or full duplex mode. Then comes the topology. Now, topology is basically the layout of the arrangement of the network devices in a network. Okay. Signals, it determines the type of signals used for transmitting the information. These were the important features of uh, data of physical layer. Now we are going to move towards the data link layer. Okay, so data link layer is responsible for error-free transfer of data frames. Okay, so frames are transmitted here. It defines the format of data on the network. It provides a reliable, efficient communication between two or more devices. It is mainly responsible for unique identification of each device that resides on a local network. Okay. Now, there are two sublayers of data link layer. Number one is the logical link control layer, and second is the media access control layer. So let's discuss the logical link control layer. It is responsible for transferring the packets to network layer of the receiver that is receiving. Okay, so it is responsible for transferring the packets. So the packets that are coming from the network layer, data link layer basically receives those packets. Okay, data in network layer are referred as packets, and data in data link layer are referred as frames. So basically, a logical link layer receives the packets which are transferred from the network layer. Okay, it identifies the address of the network layer protocol from the header, and it also provides flow control. Okay, next is the media access control layer. A media access control layer is a link between logical link control layer and network's physical layer. Okay, and it is used for transferring the packets over the network. So these were the two sub layers of data link layer: logical link control layer and a media access control layer. Now, these are the functions of most important functions of data link layer, which is error control, physical addressing, framing, access control, and flow control. Now, we are going to discuss all these functions. Number one is framing. Now, what is framing? The data link layer translates or converts the physical raw bit stream into packets, which are known as frames. Okay. So data link layer basically converts the bits of data which are coming from the physical layer into frames. This is basically known as framing. The data link layer adds the header and trailer to the frame. The header which is added to the frame contains the hardware destination and source address. Okay. So this whole process is known as framing, converting the bit streams of data which is coming from physical layer into frames. Next function is physical addressing. Now the data link layer adds a header to the frame that contains a destination address. The frame is transmitted to the destination address that is mentioned in the header. So this is called as physical addressing. Next function is flow control. Now, this function is also very important, which is performed by data link layer. Now, flow control is the main functionality. Okay. It is a technique through which constant data rate is maintained on both the sides so that no data gets corrupted. Okay. It ensures that the transmitting station, such as a server with high processing speed, does not exceed the receiving station, which might have a lower processing speed. So it maintains this data link layer, maintains a flow between the transmitting and the receiving end, so that the rate at which the sender or the server is sending the data is almost equal to the receiving station. Okay. Next function is error control. This is also an important function of data link layer. Error control is achieved by adding a calculated value, CRC. CRC stands for cyclic redundancy check. It is a technique which is used to uh, uh, control the errors while sending data from sender to the receiver. Now, CRC value is that is placed to the data link layer's trailer and which is added to the message frame before it is sent to the physical layer. So an extra bit is added while the frames are sent to the physical layer. If any error seems to occur, then the receiver sends the acknowledgement for the retransmission of the corrupted frames. So if the receiver encounters any error in the data frames which are sent, it immediately sends an acknowledgement that I have received corrupted bits, and you again retransmit the frame, again retransmit the bits. So here error can be detected and it can be corrected. So this is one of the functions of data link layer. And the last function is access control. When two or more devices are connected to the same communication channel, then the data link layer protocols are used to determine which device is going to have control over the link at a given time. So access control, basically, as the term suggests, it establishes or it determines which device is going to have access for sending or receiving the data. Next comes the physical network layer. This is the third layer of the OSI model that manages device addressing, tracks the location of the devices on the network. It determines the best path to move the data from source to the destination based on the network conditions, the priority of the services, and many other factors. The data link layer is responsible for routing and forwarding the packets. This is one of the important function of the network layer. Next is the routers. Now the routers are layer 3 devices. They are specified in this layer and used to provide the routing services within an internet work. The protocols used to route the network traffic are known as network layer protocols. So the examples of these protocols in the network layer are IP and IPv6. So these are the most common protocols used to route the packets in the network layer. Now, the functions of the network layer are internet working, and internet working is the main responsibility of the network layer. It provides a logical connection between the different devices. So in the physical layer, a physical connection was established. Okay, there was a physical medium, but here in network layer, a logical address or the logical connection is established between different devices. Next function is addressing. A network layer adds the source and destination address to the header of the frame. Now, addressing is used to identify the devices on the internet logically, not physically, but logically. Next function is routing. Routing is the major component of the network layer and it determines the best optimal path out of the multiple paths from the source to the destination. This is one of the most important features of the network layer, that it finds out the best optimal path. There are many paths through which data or the packets can be transferred, but it finds out the best optimal path for the packets to be sent from source to the destination. Next is packetizing. A network layer receives segments from the upper layer and then converts it into packets. So segments are a terminology of transport layer. From the transport layer, segments are received by the network layer and the network layer converts them into packets. This process is known as packetizing. It is achieved by the internet protocol present in the network layer. Next is the transport layer. Now this layer is the heart of the OSI model. Okay, this is the fourth layer and it ensures that messages are transmitted in order in which they are sent and there is no duplication or redundancy of the data. Okay, so this is called the heart of OSI model. Transport layer is called the heart of OSI model because the data or the bits or the packets which are sent across the network should be in order in which they are sent, should be received in order in which they are sent, and there should be no duplication of data. So the main responsibility of transport layer is to transfer the data completely. Okay, it receives the data from the upper layer and converts them into smaller units known as segments. So segments is a terminology used in transport layer. In network layer, we call it packets. In data link layer, we called it frames, and physical layer, we called it bits or signals. Here in transport layer, we call the data as segments. Okay, this layer can be termed as an end-to-end layer. Okay, as it provides point-to-point connection between source and destination to deliver the reliable data. Okay, we can also term it as process-to-process layer, end-to-end layer, point-to-point layer. Okay. Now, there are two protocols that are used, most important protocols that are used in this layer. One is the TCP protocol, Transmission Control Protocol, and the other is the UDP, User Datagram Protocol. We are going to discuss both these protocols. Number one is the Transmission Control Protocol. Now, Transmission Control Protocol is a standard protocol that allows the systems to communicate over the internet. Okay, it establishes and maintains a connection between different hosts. TCP protocol divides the data into smaller units known as segments. Each segment travels over the internet using multiple routes, and they arrive in different order at the destination. The transmission control protocol reorders the packets in correct order at the receiving end. Okay, so TCP is one of the reliable protocols in the transport layer. It is reliable. Okay, error-free segments are passed here. Whereas in user datagram protocol is unreliable transport protocol. As in this case, receiver does not send any acknowledgement when the packets are received. So the sender does not wait for any acknowledgement. Therefore, this protocol is unreliable, because there could be errors as there is no acknowledgement sent. There could be, the packets could be missing, the data could be missing, but user datagram protocol is faster. So the transmission control protocol is reliable but slower, whereas the user datagram protocol is unreliable, but it is faster. Okay. Next is the session layer. It is the third layer of the OSI model. Okay, if we start from the presentation layer, from the application layer, it is the third layer of the OSI model. The session layer is used to establish, maintain, and synchronize the interconnection between communicating devices. So session layer, as the name suggests, it establishes and maintains an interaction or a session. Okay, as you can see in the diagram, the client is requesting the server and the server is responding. So there's a connection between one end to the other, client to the server or sender to the receiver. Now, what are the functions of session layer? The first function is dialogue control. Session layer acts as a dialogue controller that creates a dialogue between processes, or we can say that it allows the communication between the processes, which can be either half duplex or full duplex. Okay. Next is synchronization, very important. Session layer adds some checkpoints, okay, when transmitting the data in a sequence. If some errors occur in the middle of the transmission of the data, then the transmission takes place again from that checkpoint. Okay, so this process is known as synchronization, and recovery also takes place at the same time. So this is one of the features of session layer, that data does not has to be retransmitted again. It via that checkpoint, it can check and transmit the data through that checkpoint, from that checkpoint. Okay. Next is the presentation layer. A presentation layer is mainly concerned with the syntax and semantics of the information exchanged between two systems. So the presentation layer, as the name suggests, is concerned with the syntax and semantics of the information. It acts as a data translator for the network. This layer is the part of the operating system that converts the data from one presentation format to another. Okay. And this layer is also known as syntax layer. And these are the functions of the presentation layer: encryption, decryption, code conversion, and compression. Okay. So let's discuss about the functions. Translation or code conversion. The processes into system exchange the information in the form of characters, strings, numbers, and so on. Okay. Different computers use different encoding methods. The presentation layer handles the interoperability between different encoding methods. It converts the data from sender dependent format into a common format and changes the common format into receiver dependent format at the receiving end. So code conversion or translation takes place in the presentation layer. Next is encryption. Encryption is needed to maintain privacy. Encryption is basically a process of converting sender transmitted information into another form, encrypted format, and sends the resulting message over the encrypted message over the network or internet. Next is compression. Data compression is a process in which the data is compressed. Okay, it reduces the number of bits that are to be transmitted over the network. Data compression is very important in multimedia, such as texts, audios, or videos. Where the data size is large, we can compress the data to send it over the network. Okay. Next, the last layer of the OSI model is the application layer. Now, the application layer acts as a window for the users and application processes to assess the network services. It handles issues such as network transparency, resource allocation, etc. An application layer is not an application, but it performs the application layer functions. It basically is a window for interacting with the users. This layer provides the network services at the end use to the end users. So what are the functions of the network layer? The first function is file transfer, access, and management of the files. Application layer allows a user to access the files in a remote computer and to retrieve the files from the computer and to manage the files in a remote computer. Okay, so all these file transfer, access, and management functions are part of application layer. Next is the mail services. Application layer provides the facility for email forwarding and storage. The last function of the application layer is directory services. An application provides the distributed database sources and it is used to provide that global information about various objects. So these were the different layers of the OSI model. In this session, we have discussed 7 layers of the OSI model. The first one was the physical layer, then came the data link layer, then the network layer, then came the transport layer, then came the session layer, then the presentation layer, and the last one was the application layer. Now, all these layers comprise of the OSI model, OSI reference model that we study in the computer networks. So I hope you liked the lecture. Thank you so much.